District. Seeing that we have a quorum and the time is just a little after 10:06 on January 14th, 2026. Happy New Year to everybody. If you please join me with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2 on our agenda is to accept comments from members of the public. We have a grant.
Just Ms. Brown.
Ms. Brown, I think we would, if you would, please come to the podium, state your name, I think you know the drill. And welcome for being.
And what is that?
Welcome to be.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, good morning, Mr. Turco, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. My name is Melissa Rao, and I'm here to speak specifically about the agenda item approving travel for the general manager to attend an International Land Subsidence Symposium in Taiwan. I want to remind the board where a significant portion of this funding ultimately comes from. Disincentive fees are penalties charged to ratepayers for using their own groundwater. These are not optional fees. They show up directly on people's water bills. Ratepayers are being pushed financially by rising regulatory costs, pumpage fees, and conversion mandates. When those same penalty dollars are then used for international travel, it creates a serious optics and trust problem for the public. I'm not questioning the value of research or professional development. I am questioning whether it's appropriate to fund overseas travel using money that was collected specifically as a penalty from ratepayers, many of whom are struggling to afford their water bills. I would also note that this is not the first international trip of this nature that has been approved. Similar overseas travel has been previously approved, including travel to the Netherlands. What concerns me is that the stated focus of the symposium involves regional subsidence strategy and field studies in areas such as northern Manila Bay in the Philippines, where conditions, geology, governance, structures, and regulatory environments have little to no direct applicability to Harris or Galveston County. That raises legitimate questions about relevance and return on investment for Texas ratepayers who are funding these activities through disincentive fees. I would also like to understand what measurable benefits, operational changes, or cost savings resulted from those prior international trips, so the board and the public can evaluate whether this type of travel has actually delivered value to ratepayers. I would like the board to clearly explain today, and I have several bullet points, and also you also got a handout of this, what measurable benefits this trip will deliver directly to Harris and Galveston County ratepayers, what specific outcomes, policy changes, or measurable benefits resulted from the prior international trips, what actionable changes, cost savings, or policy improvements are expected as a result of this travel, how the content of the symposium, which focuses on international subsidence provisions and case studies, will translate into concrete operational or regulatory improvements locally, why similar information cannot be obtained through virtual participation, like a Zoom, or domestic collaboration at a substantially lower cost, whether this travel is being fully funded by disincentive fees or sponsored by any outside entity, and if sponsored, whether that sponsor does business with the district. The total estimated cost of the trip, who will be attending, the length of travel, and the class of airfare being booked. At a minimum, I respectfully ask the board to consider delaying approval until the funding source is clearly disclosed and expected return on investment is documented. Disincentive fees should prioritize direct ratepayer relief and measurable local mitigation. not recurring international travel with unclear benefit to the people paying the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, did we have anybody else signed up?
Yes.
This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment. If there's anybody else in the audience who'd like to comment, this is your opportunity. All right. Item 3 on our agenda, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting held on December 10th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we need any discussion regarding our minutes of our December board meeting? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting held on December 10th, 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Item 4, receive hearing examiner's report and consider granting, denying, or amending applications for water well permits heard in December 2025 and prior.
Good morning, County Board.
Good morning.
We have prepared a report, including recommendations for those purposes who have requested permits or renewal of permits, or there's been request for cancellation or modification of permits. The recommendations are as they are in the report. We do have 2 additional recommendations. The recommendations did not make it into the report because the permitting fees had not been paid. They are both renewal requests. One is for Battleground Concrete, well number 16309 is the regulatory area number 2. Currently permitted 5 million gallons. The request is for the same amount. The recommendation is that the board basically renew the permit for the same application, 5 million gallons. Then we have Madison MBTTO Inc. The regulatory area 1, currently permitted on 4 million gallons. The request is for a renewal of the same amount. The recommendation is that the board renew the permit for the same amount as previously permitted. Any questions concerning these 2 additional recommendations or any other recommendations in the report?
Any questions from board members? All right. Hearing no questions, then do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion needed? And does anybody need to abstain from any of the applications? Not hearing any discussion needed or abstention needed. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5 on our agenda is to consider emergency permits reviewed by the general manager during the course of the last month. Not an action item per se, but gives the board an opportunity to ask the general manager about anything that's going for him. We had one that's listed on the agenda. Does anybody have any questions? Then with no questions, we can move on with our agenda. Item 6, receive a presentation from the City of Houston regarding the groundwater reduction plan.
Well, as we've had over the last several months, we've had several of our largest our DRP managers come in and give us an update on this process by which we provide water supplies in the region. Today, we are joined by the Director of Houston Public Works, Randy Macchi, and Andrew Molly, who's the Chief Water Officer of the City of Houston. So, Randy, thanks for being here, for taking the time, and the report is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Turco. Mr. Chair, board members, it's such a privilege to be here with you. I'll tell you on a personal note, it's a privilege to be down in this neck of the woods, which is my neck of the woods. Although I did go all the way into town, come all the way back to town, and afterwards go all the way back into town. So, but it's wonderful being here. For the first 10 years we lived in Houston. You know, I came here to Houston to go to law school at UH, and we were fortunate enough, wise enough to realize this was the place to be and stay. But for the the first 10 years, we lived maybe about 10 minutes from this building itself, so it's part of my daily commute home, so it's wonderful to be here. I want to just take a couple of minutes, and the bulk of our presentation I'll turn over to Drew to address where we stand in the city's efforts right now, but I wanted to take a few minutes just to let you know a little bit about what's going on within Public Works, and specifically within the water utility itself. If you've been following the news since Mayor John Whitmire was elected, you know that the city is undergoing significant transformations in its operational practices. There's been a lot of effort expended on ensuring that we are doing not just the right things, but in the right way as well. Efforts to consolidate operations to make sure that our dollars are going as far as they possibly can go, that our people are in places where they can be successful. Those are ongoing transformative measures that are taking place across the entire city. And Public Works is certainly no exception to that. It's the largest civilian department in the city with more than 4,000 employees, with an annual budget exceeding $3.5 billion, the largest accredited public works agency in the United States. Our work is cut out for us as well in those same efforts. And today, we're going to talk to you a little bit about where the utility is at right now and where it's going. From my side, I want to reiterate, though, just the commitment that is being made by the Whitmire administration to shoring up our infrastructure. That's a principle that the mayor ran on during the campaign season, which was we needed to fix our infrastructure, we needed to give it the attention. And I can tell you, in just those first few weeks after he was elected, he spent considerable time in the field with our staff, actually looking at the condition of our systems. And we spent a lot of time looking at the water system in and of itself. This first slide here just gives you a little bit of an inkling into the financial commitments that are coming forward. This details just under $20 billion of necessary but planned upgrades, maintenance, and expansion to the Houston Combined Utility System. Of course, something that's taken a lot of discussion over the years is the federal consent decree on our wastewater collection system addressing sanitary sewer overflows. That's the lion's share of it right now. We still have about 11 years left on the timeline for that, and there's around $9 billion of capital improvements to be delivered within the collection system. But as you know, there is no collection system without a transmission system. And the transmission system within the city of Houston is something that has been long neglected and has needed much attention, some of it very urgent. To that effort, we have expedited the construction of a new treatment plant, new surface water treatment plant out at the east, which of course is our workhorse. More than 60% of our daily production comes out of the east plant in and of itself. It directly powers the Texas Medical Center, the Port of Houston, all of the petrochemical industry. And the majority of what is ultimately 5.5 million people in our region that receive water from the city of Houston comes out of the east. And it is, of course, being held together with duct tape, baling wire, bubble gum, whatever else you can imagine. And so it's been an urgent necessity that we expedite the construction of a replacement plant that can meet not just our existing needs, but the growing needs of our city, which continues to expand on a regular basis. But more than just the east plant, you may also be aware of the fact that the city of Houston on an annual basis loses, or at least is unable to account for, about 32 billion gallons of treated water. That's more than the entire city of Fort Worth uses on an annual basis. You break that down in daily numbers, that's roughly 80 MGD per day. Actually, I think it's closer to 88 MGD per day, which is more than the original Northeast water purification plant was even rated to produce, which was 80. So we lose an entire plant's worth of production of water due largely to leaky pipes, broken water mains, and other factors that we as a department have done a very poor job for a number of years in keeping track of. So the commitment that Mayor Whitmire has made, that he has charged me directly with, and that our staff is taking on in an admirable fashion, is to get these problems fixed and to prioritize them immediately. And I'm just so excited that we've done that. If you look at this next slide here, this actually puts in perspective what some of these commitments look like as related to the rest of the city as a whole. And here in just the pie chart, that green and yellow section is what is represented by the distribution and collection system. So more than half of the 5-year CIP of roughly $16 billion is going to be dedicated just to the combined utility system. These are exciting times for us. They're stressful times for us, but it's an opportunity that is rarely seen anywhere across the country. And I would submit to you, you would be hard pressed to find any municipality in the nation that is dedicating as much financial resources to shoring up infrastructure as what you see taking place in Houston. And as we like to talk about many times, because I know that all of us are from different areas in the region, Houston problems aren't just Houston problems. They affect all of us collectively. We, in fact, within the water system, are really all in the same boat together, because Houston provides the drinking water, whether it is treated or not, to effectively everybody in our region. And so it's of paramount importance to us that we ensure that the most precious resource we have is stewarded appropriately and properly, and that we set ourselves up not just for success today, but for success for generations to come. So with that, I'm going to turn the time now over to Drew. He's going to talk a little bit about where we're at on our groundwater reduction plan. It certainly relates directly to the investments that we're making here. But after that, we also have joined with us Satish Tripathi from our team. If you have hyper-technical questions, we will absolutely punt them to him. And if you don't have his contact information, we'll be happy to share that.
Thank you. Thanks, Randy. Good morning, board members. It gives me great pleasure to be here today with you, especially with Randy, our Public Works Director. We really appreciate the invitation to speak to you today about the commitments that the city has made to the region to provide sustainable, resilient, and affordable water supplies for our communities that we serve. We all know that we live in a time where natural resources are becoming more scarce. Which means they are more valuable than ever before. Wastewater effluent, for example, which 20 years ago was not viewed by most people as a resource, is now a future water supply for many communities in Texas. We are blessed and fortunate to live in a part of the state where surface water generally is very abundant. For this reason, and wisely, our forebears made some strategic decisions to construct reservoirs to store, manage, and utilize this precious resource. I would say that the city has been a longtime partner with Harris-Galveston Subsidence District. We thank you, board members, for your service and your steadfast leadership when it comes to following the science behind the work of your staff. So with that said, I'm going to advance some slides, and let's see here. Okay, so I think it's pretty important to kind of set the context for the city of Houston and the region that we serve in terms of the size and the magnitude of what we do. We heard Randy talk a lot about these very significant projects that we have on our books that really are required to replace the aging infrastructure that we all know we have, but also to help promote and accelerate opportunities for growth in the region. And so I think it's many of you probably are fairly familiar with the system, but let me just give you a very high-level overview of the size of it. So generally speaking, we have we have water that is plentiful on the east side of the city. We move that water, so we treat it at 3 surface water treatment plants, notably the northeast plant, east plant, and southeast plant. I kind of chuckle a little bit. The city real creative in terms of the names of these plants. So some of my staff, we call it the new oop and soup. But at the end of the day, those are the 3 facilities, very large plants. 2 of them very important, have regional stakeholders and partners that we work with. The authorities, the regional water authorities. We have the Southeast plant with co-participants like Pasadena and Friendswood. and a number of those partners that are very important pieces to the infrastructure that we all collectively value and work on every day. As that water is treated and it's moved across the city of Houston, we have major repump stations that help move that water across the city, and there's 7 of them. We have a vast system that's augmented with some groundwater. We have 54 groundwater plants, approximately 133 wells, and then we have a vast system of about 7,000 miles of pipeline that we use to move that water through the system. Interestingly, we serve over 5 million people, about 2.3 million retail customers in the city of Houston, and then about 2.5 million people outside the city of Houston city limits. Another interesting fact is that we have 7 water systems that we own and operate. So we all think of the main system, but we also have 6 other smaller systems that we operate. Kingwood, for example, would be one of those isolated systems, and there's a number of other ones. As far as the timeline goes, I think it's also important to recognize that where we've been and where we're going. And so this timeline helps create a picture of where we've come from. And so we all know that in the very early days of Houston, we were 100% groundwater, and we pumped groundwater. And I find what's interesting is by the time we got to 1990, that was kind of the time frame where we were actually kind of 50% groundwater, 50% surface water. And ever since 1990, we've been moving away towards predominantly being a surface water supply, a drinking water system. The East Plant, which you heard our Public Works Director talk about, the East Plant, built in 1954. It was one of the first surface water treatment plants built in the state of Texas. El Paso, I think, was the first, but as the 50s started to come into existence with the drought that was dealt with in the 50s, large reservoirs were constructed, and Houston saw its first surface water treatment plant in 1954. And then, of course, we had the Southeast Plant, followed by the Northeast Plant. I think we ask ourselves this question a lot in the business that I'm in and the people that I work with. So from an operational level, is this the new normal? And I think a lot of us look at the events on this table here, in this chart, and recognize that many of these events were painful times in our recent history. I look at it as an opportunity for the challenges. I think that it's safe to say we are in a world where resiliency, redundancy, and reliability is very important for the customers that we serve. And I think this chart shows some of the magnitude of the events that we've all faced. Some of these events, if you ask somebody in Dallas, they probably couldn't tell you a whole lot about the Memorial and Tax Day floods. They probably wouldn't even register on your scale. But for many of us in here, those were moments in time that we may not ever forget, especially if you or somebody or loved ones experienced loss of infrastructure or your personal belongings. Of course, even Hurricane Harvey was an event that, most people would recognize what Harvey is, but you ask somebody at Houstonian what Harvey is, and it was pretty unbelievable. The Winter Storm Uri is an example of an event that actually is beyond just Houston. It was a major event that impacted the entire state of Texas and tested not just our water infrastructure, but our electrical grid. And I think my takeaway from this and what I want to convey to you on this is that we need to build infrastructure that can withstand these major climate type of challenges that are not going away. They are not going away anytime soon. And so when we talk about infrastructure like the Northeast Plant, we look at the resiliency that we've built into that facility. Some may not remember, but I remember when we were building the Northeast Plant, Hurricane Harvey was right sort of in the beginning stages as we were going through the design. And one thing that we did was we went and we surveyed where the high-level watermarks were on the infrastructure at the existing plant, and we made sure that the new plant, the Northeast Plant expansion plant, was built well above where the high mark was from Hurricane Harvey. So those are types of adaptive things that I think are really important. Of course, it comes with a cost, and these are the things that are imperative that we explain to our community why these costs are important and the benefits that the community receives by those improvements. So kind of more to the cut to the chase that I think we're here today to talk to you about is the efforts that have been made by the city of Houston as we work towards making sure that we meet this very important requirement of complying with our subsidence goals. And so, as we all know, there's three areas. The first area is the compliance area number one. Compliance area number one is an area that we have, we don't have any groundwater wells, we don't own any wells, we don't pump water in this area. This is an area that is fully converted. The groundwater withdrawal limit is 10%. We don't pump anything in this area. So there's probably not a whole lot to talk about in this compliance zone. Compliance area number two. This is an area where we're limited to 20% withdrawal. The trend has been that we typically use about 7 to 10%. So this is an area where, on average, over the last 5 years, we consume or we use about 5.4 billion gallons a year, which is equivalent to about 15 million gallons a day. I really don't think there's probably a lot to report on this other than to say that we are well within the targets that are expected of us. I think this is the one that most people get more interested in, and this is compliance area number 3. And so I want to talk to you all a little bit about how the city has fared in this, how historically we've done, and kind of what the future looks like for compliance area number 3. So up into 2025, we were allowed by subsidence rules to use 70% from that area for groundwater. Now that we are in 2025 to 2034, we're obviously in a new regulatory situation, which now we are only allowed to use up to 40% of groundwater. And then, of course, our ultimate goal is 2035, which is the 80% conversion or allowable use of groundwater at 20%. So up until 2025, I would tell you that I think we've done a pretty good job in terms of meeting this requirement, the 30% conversion. We have generally used or over-converted, so we've generally used 47 to 56% of that water in that area has come from groundwater. So about 50%. The current groundwater withdrawal permit is 34 billion gallons, and our 5-year average has been about 26.7 billion gallons. And our Area 3 overall conversion plan. So we clearly, we all know this, we have a lot of good work that is set to happen. And you know, with all the things that you heard from our Director of Public Works talk about the major commitments that we have to infrastructure, this is clearly one that we are very well committed to. Let me change the slide to the overall conversion plan for Area 3. So we have GRP customers that we're working on today, and we'll continue to be working with to convert. By 2027, we expect that amount to be 13.16 billion gallons. These are GRP customers. In 2026, we're expecting about 4.7 billion gallons of water to be utilized, and 8.4 billion in 2027. As far as the long-term plan to meet the 2035 conversion requirement, there are some very key elements to that conversion work. And the first one is Kingwood. So we are planning to convert Kingwood. Kingwood would constitute about 6.9 billion gallons per year. We also have Willow Chase, which is a smaller, isolated groundwater system. And again, as I talked about this a little bit earlier, we have isolated groundwater systems or isolated systems that we own and operate. So Kingwood being one of those. And then the other one is Willow Chase. So Willow Chase is an isolated system, 100% on groundwater, and we have plans to convert them as part of this 2035 conversion. And that amount of water that would account for that would be approximately 1.6 billion gallons or 1,643 million gallons per year. And then on the east side of Lake Houston, so this is another opportunity for us as we build out our infrastructure necessary to convert Kingwood, for example. We have an opportunity to go across Lake Houston to some existing districts that we own and operate. District 82 is one such district, and District 73 is another such district. And so it would make sense to convert those, and those conversions would account for approximately 1.8 billion gallons of water. That, in a nutshell, is really what we are tasked with over the next 10 years. We feel very strongly that we've got the right resources and the commitment from our leadership team to achieve this successfully. We know that there's going to be some bumps along the way, there's going to be some obstacles along the way, but I think, like I mentioned, a big part of our success is working collaboratively with our partners. We feel very strongly that our partners are an important part of this, and so we preach that. We talk to our teammates. We have a lot of folks in public works. Specifically in Houston Water, we have approximately 1,600 employees, so it's a big workforce, and we collaboratively work together very well. And so with that said, we stand available here for some questions. As our director just said, if you have any real solidly technical questions, we have our managing engineer Satish Tripathi, and we can get back to you if you have questions that are peeling the onion back a little bit there. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and stand here for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Drew, and Randy, appreciate you giving this time. Anybody have any questions?
I got a question. I represent the memorial villages in the city of Humboldt. And obviously we buy a lot of water from the city of Houston, so we're directly impacted like everybody else on what you guys are doing financially and how that cost ultimately gets passed along. We clearly understand you got a lot of infrastructure that is needed and benefits us, and we're certainly interested in paying whatever our fair and reasonable share of that is. So actually the thing that I'm particularly interested in is what is the city doing or planning to do, timing wise, dollar wise, to address this leakage, waste, lack of accountability, and the great risk of relying on anything in the Chronicle. The numbers are pretty astounding, and then anecdotally, as I drive around town, you see what looks like a 5 or 6 or 8 inch geyser coming up. And I obviously can't assume all of that is groundwater, but on the other hand, in the worst instance, you're pumping water out of the ground and it's going into the street, and as you noted, even worse, it's going through a treatment process. So I would be interested, because that's kind of a problem in your larger basket problem.
I really appreciate that question, and one of the reasons I really appreciate it is because I recently just came back to the city of Houston after doing a stint down in South Texas, specifically Corpus Christi. And different parts of the state see water a little differently. I happen to be a part of a utility in Corpus Christi where water running down the street would very quickly get the attention of the media, would get the attention of your elected officials. And not because of those reasons was it important, but when you're running out of water in a place like Corpus Christi, it's not acceptable to have water running down the street. But I would argue it's not acceptable to have water running down the street anywhere. And so what I would tell you is that I believe, and our public works director kind of touched on this a little bit, but really for us to address that problem and that challenge that we have, it's going to take financial commitment, and we've got that financial commitment. So replacing about 3% of our water lines is something that's really a best practice, and that is something that we have fallen short on in years past. And so we have the commitment from the leadership team that we are going to step up and replace a greater quantity of those small diameter pipes. We also have a commitment from our leadership team that we are adding more crews to address some of these leaks. Look, I get it. Part of the challenge that we have with the community, and I see why, is the community is expected to basically pay for lots of these improvements, and when you see water running down the street, it's a hard message, and it's a message that needs to change. And so It's not something that's gonna happen in the next couple of weeks, it's something that's gonna happen over time. But I will tell you, from my personal commitment, that is that's the top three items that I have on my list, is addressing water loss, improving that number. You know, we know that the state looks as they should, very carefully and with a lot of scrutiny on water loss. In fact, you know, low interest financing that you get from Texas Water Development Board has a string attached. You have to meet certain water loss requirements. So very good comment, point well taken. And I can tell you from my perspective and from the leadership team that I have the pleasure of working with, it is something that we are absolutely committed to improving.
So is it a see it, fix it, or is it a, we know in this area we've got 20 miles, a combination of the two?
Well, I think a big part of it is when we see it, we need to get out there and fix it quickly. You know, we had a pretty stellar backlog, as I understand, a year ago. We were up to about 1,800 active water leaks. We're down to a level that is still very high, you know, approximately 500, and that number needs to come down. But to your point, when we see it, we need to fix it. The other thing is we need to make sure that we have sort of an intermediary program where when we see a problem and it's leaking and it's on a pipe, like for example, AC pipe, asbestos cement, which, you know, tends to be an older pipe, you know, being able to go in there and you know, address the line, design and construct sort of a real time, instead of putting it into a CIP program that takes 5 years, can we do something sort of intermediary where we can address that? We don't have to wait you know, longer time to have that in our CIP program. So that's something that we're talking about actively right now. And then, like I said, really adding more dollars to our CIP program where we're replacing this aging infrastructure, you know, more quickly. And because really what a lot of this is it's aged infrastructure, and we have challenges in Houston, unlike many other cities where we have contracted and expansive soils, and it's problematic, and so that's the plan.
Drew, I represent the city of Houston. It's great to have you back in the city of Houston. Welcome back. Are you able to track all of these leaks, like the actual size of the pipe and the locations, or they're not being done?
Oh, absolutely. We have a system that absolutely tracks and categorizes and catalogs the leaks. And you know, one of the things that is fairly apparent is that, you know, there is AC pipe tends to be more of an issue, and so, you know, we have gotten smarter about how and where and the programmatic approach to making sure that we get a handle on this, because you know, Houston has been a leader in many facets of the work that we do, and I think this is one that has been a challenge for many years. Like I said, this didn't happen in the last couple of weeks. This has been a challenge that's been going on for many years. And I think we have a commitment to our community to fix this. And more importantly, we have the resources to do it, and we have the will to do it. And I'm very positive that we are going to make great strides, you know, in the next 12 to 18 months, and to commit to the community that we are going to make big improvements in this area.
Yes, I represent 5 cities and 1 water district locally. In Area 1, we were the first to convert. We have totally converted. I was part of the original co-participant negotiating team with the city of Houston with John Vandenbosch way back when. And one thing that struck me that's different now, it seems like, is that at that time, because Area 1 was so critical to convert immediately, the city of Houston stepped up and said, we're going to take the lead, we're going to build a southeast plant. We invite all of you to buy into it, which we all did. We all went out and sold bonds, we all hired engineers, we designed our transmission systems, and we converted. And we've participated since then and kept up with the demand. And when I hear your presentation today, and I hear you talk about Area 3, which is not converted, city of Houston, we're gonna take the lead and provide the resource, the infrastructure, if you will, the plant, and we invite you to participate with us. I don't see that I mean, I don't personally see it happening. There's a couple of districts there, I'm not gonna mention them all, but we heard from one of them today. It feels like their conversion to surface water or lack of is a penalty. And it's a penalty against the ratepayers when in fact no one seems to be doing anything to really move forward and make it happen. What is the city of Houston's position on cooperating and getting those, and that's a very large area, and they have a very serious problem, and that's where most of the subsidence that we have today is taking place. Is the city of Houston moving forward to work with those districts up there to convert? And this may be a director of public works question, but because I am a former director, so I'm very familiar with it. But I just want to know, are y'all working with these folks, or is everybody just doing their own thing?
Yeah, you know, your point is so well taken, and I'll tell you a little bit, that's why I led off in the presentation with, we're undergoing really a dramatic transformation in city government. There's a lot of things that the city's gotten used to doing business in a particular way, but it's not tenable for us. The short answer to your question is this: all options are on the table, and they need to be on the table. Whereas, I can tell you when I joined the city just a couple of years ago, we didn't discuss other options, right? It was, we were going in a particular path. But from our perspective, we're actually pretty desperately right now playing catch up on all of the issues and the problems that we have. And it's difficult to give you a straight answer of, I can tell you who we're working with and who we're not working with, because we're still trying to uncover exactly what it is we want to do and how we want that approach to be. To that end, collaboration and cooperation is an absolute hallmark of John Whitmire's administration. I can promise you that. No conversation that I have had with him ever ends without talking about who else are going to be our partners in this. We need to have more partners in that because we recognize that we're stronger together and we're all in it together. But at the same time, the city also has to take an approach from, we've got to be a better partner in that part of the equation as well. It's one thing to take the lead, it's another thing to kind of have the bully pulpit and the big stick. And a partnership really needs to be a collaborative process where we walk away friends and not enemies. And so that's my long way of saying, I don't know, but we're working on it, and we're actively working on that, because those are the very conversations that we're having right now. Here's your question about what are we doing to fix this problem. It's the same conversation we're having there right now. Some of you work in companies, right? And you've been in my office recently. We've talked about how are we going to partner together on solving this problem, because at the end of the day, the city can't do it all by itself. It simply can't do it all by itself. There's too much to do, and there's frankly too much at stake for all of us collectively for us to have the hubris to think that we've got it all on our own. But we want to play an active role, and we want to be a good partner. And that's the commitment that we have is to be moving forward.
Well, you know, it's just that it looked like you were talking about Area 3 as it relates to the city of Houston and what you were doing for the city of Houston. And it seems like a totally different conversation than what was taking place in the late 80s when I was involved with it. And I don't know. Houston had the big stick then. They own not just the plants, but they also own the raw surface water. And we were told, we won't sell you the raw water, but we will sell you surface water. I mean, that's the stick that they use on us. And fortunately, we took their advice and did it along with Pasadena, Clear Lake Water Authority, and some others. But it seems like somebody needs to get together on a regional basis. That's what we are here. We're Galveston and Houston County, and or Harris County. And it doesn't seem, it seems like everybody's working on their own and not working together. like we did in the late eighties. And that's how the southeast plant got built. We funded over half that plant, co-participants. Houston did not. Now, they operate it. We've changed operators several times from the city of Houston to contract and back and forth. But always, with the idea, let's produce enough surface water to meet the subsidence guidelines and in a reasonable rate. I know we pay a whole lot less than a retail customer for the city of Houston does, just simply because we own a piece of the plant, which is probably the smartest thing we ever did. And I don't know if y'all are even considering that kind of scenario, but it would seem like the districts up there that are in conflict and can't raise the capital to build their own plant, that they would participate in building or at least expanding an existing plant up in that area. So I would be very curious to see what
But I
steps the
think
Houston's
they have, I mean, the regional water authorities, the north and the west, aren't they basically co-owners of the,
Yeah, northeast and northeast, yeah. We're actually the minority there, only 16%. But, you know,
There's other ones that aren't though, and
you're absolutely right, yeah.
they're not meeting the conversion schedule now. They're paying penalties or disincentive fees, whatever you wanna call it. I don't think of it as a penalty, I think of it as just putting off the inevitable. And it's costing more every year that you put off the inevitable. What we paid to participate in that plant, we couldn't touch it now for that money. So I'm glad we did it.
And that's frankly, that's a wonderful analogy on the current state of our infrastructure, right? Today, we're paying for the fact that we kicked the can down the road for so long. You don't get to 32 billion gallons of unaccountable water overnight. I mean, this is a decades in the making sort of process that's gotten there. But I appreciate your comments, your feedback there, very thoughtful, and I just want you to know, we're having those same conversations.
well, I think the other thing we hear from time to time is, you know, a little bit of finger pointing. You know, we're doing our part, but they're behind, or vice versa. So certainly it has to be a collaborative effort. With respect to the expansion of the northeast plant, is that on track timing-wise, so that we can get surface water to everybody? To meet not only the city's conversion goals, but the participants' conversion goals?
It is, and I can tell you that there is a lot of collaboration. I have been in Public Works now for about 3 months, and much of my calendar is meetings with the regional water authorities. We have a quarterly meeting with the Southeast Plant co-participants.
You should go to every one of them.
You can go to every one of them. Okay, well, even better. And I will tell you that, you know, the Northeast Plant expansion project, we are commissioning that second part of that facility as we speak. It is providing good quality water. And so, I mean, these are all things that I think are tremendous opportunities to basically highlight and champion the fact that we do have a strong partnership. I know at times it may not feel like it. At times there's gonna be some conflict. I can tell you that even the co-parts, when I was here in the past, there's some challenges at times, but that all goes in partnership. And we have, it ebbs and it flows. But I would think I would say the trajectory is in a very good direction right now. And it can't stop. We need to continue to work on these partnerships and these relationships. And it's an education process as well, because we have, you know, board members that serve their elected, you know, their boards, and there's communities that, you know, sometimes aren't necessarily understanding the amount of commitment and work that goes into delivering these types of projects.
So with the city of Pasadena, I know you're in the process of extending, I think, a 54-inch line south. And where is that going this year?
Well, you asked me a question I don't have the answer for. I can get you that information. Look, I know a big part of that 54-inch, from what I remember from before, is much needed large diameter transmission line to replace an old aged 42-inch water line. And so, as I understand that project is, I don't wanna misspeak on this, but I understand that the project is very much happening as we speak. As I understand it, there was some challenges with acquiring some of the real estate necessary for the pipeline. But I can definitely get your contact information and give you an update more specifically on where we exactly stand on that.
Do we have any other questions from board members? All right, thank you, we very much
Thank you, sir.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you.
That takes us to, item 7 on our agenda. Consider a resolution authorizing the general manager to execute an interlocal agreement with Gulf Coast Water Authority for a water conservation grant.
Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and Happy New Year. Hope you all have a great 2026. For our water conservation grants, we received an application from the Gulf Coast Water Authority on behalf of 3 cities. They're the cities of Hitchcock, Lamarck, and the former Galveston County Wizard 1, which is now Dickinson Water District. The goal of their grant was in 2 parts. One part was to perform a leak detection using remote sensing technologies under the company of Astera. This would help pinpoint locations within their line where there are the greatest opportunities to find a leak. And then the other part is to repair those leaks. So this was brought to the Water Conservation Committee and was unanimously approved back in November. The total reimbursement for this grant is just over $106,000, and it is contingent upon the submission and documentation that the identified leaks from this remote sensing technology will actually be inspected in the field and repaired.
This doesn't include the repairs though, this is just for the, okay.
Yes, no, that's a great question. So this is like the first part. Yes, doing like the desktop recon, pinpointing the locations, and then the onus is on the applicant in those 3 cities to actually do the repairs. But we won't actually fund, so Gulf Coast is going to fund the whole study for Astera in the beginning. We will provide reimbursement for that study upon the repairs being documented and done.
Gulf Coast is on board with this, because if our meeting, this was kind of what we said had to happen before we were gonna get behind it. And then I guess that was communicated, and they said, yes.
Yes, sir.
Forward.
Yes, so they provided a letter of support. We also have within the attachments of your memo are letters of support and commitment from those 3 cities saying that they will use this and then make the repairs on behalf of their portion of the grant. So that was all included. And they also are waiting for our decision, or your decision, for their project. So it's anticipated to start in February and then end in February next year, so we'll be about a month there.
And just to be clear, this was brought to the Water Conservation Committee, and they did discuss this on a couple different occasions, and unanimously approved.
Yes, those first brought to on August. You had some questions. We were able to go back and provide some answers to those questions to make sure that we were getting what we needed. And it does have the potential to save about 100 million gallons a year. These cities do have higher leaks, so this would be a great opportunity to have some water savings.
Do we need to vote on it?
We do. So we'll leave a motion.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Do we need any further discussion or have any questions? All right, then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of approving the resolution authorizing the interlocal agreement with Gulf Coast Water Authority for water conservation grant, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, consider resolution authorizing the expenditure of funds to award a water conservation grant to Texas A&M Agri-Life.
Alright, so with the success of the district's award-winning school program, which was actually rebranded a few years ago to H2O Lab, and also modernized with this curriculum, we've seen an increase in enrollments of over 50% compared to previous years. So we wanted to, this project that we're working with would aim to extend the reach of the school program and would also be in alignment with Objective 2.1B within the Water Conservation Strategic Plan, which is to target high school students with this subsidence and water conservation education. So the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Green Infrastructure for Texas Wetland Program has a high school internship program that would educate local high school students on the local watersheds and importance of green infrastructure. By sponsoring this program, we would be able to include subsidence education along with that curriculum, and then offer also water conservation when high school students are learning about the local watersheds. So this would be about $70,000 for 1 year. It would support the high school students and then also staff, and was formerly with the EPA, but based on administrative changes last year, it was no longer funded. So this is a great opportunity to keep this high school internship going and allow for the subsidence district to have some high school education on subsidence and include the Smarter About Water tools and resources on all of that. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it was also unanimously approved by the Water Conservation Committee back in August of last year.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion or further questions needed? All right, now call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9, consider authorizing district staff to represent the district at the 2026 International Symposium on Land Subsidence hosted by National Central University, Taiwan, in collaboration with Land Subsidence International Initiative at the Taipei International Convention Center, Taiwan. Mike, you want to give us a...
Yeah, I'll just briefly say that, I'll let Ashley lay out in detail, but the district has participated in this UNESCO collaboration on the International Symposium going all the way back to the early 90s. In fact, I was doing some historical research on a different item and saw a published paper by district staff and what was then the National Geodetic Survey about the development of our methodology for using GPS to monitor subsidence. And actually that paper was one of the first papers that laid out the methodology and how that was going to work. So this collaboration that we've had here has really helped us internally with our monitoring and understanding of subsidence as it relates to changes in water use, but it also gives us an opportunity to share all the information that we've learned with the international community on subsidence, which is a truly international group with that alternative work.
Yeah, no, thank you. So as Mike was saying, this is really a wonderful opportunity. It's the only symposium in the world that focuses on subsidence. And as we know, we are very unique here, not only in the state, but in the country, as us in Fort Bend Subsidence District being the only subsidence districts for the United States. When we attended in 2023 in New Orleans, we were able to connect with the people that were there, with the UNESCO group.
I'm sorry, it was in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, yes, in 23.
Yeah.
By connecting with them, we were actually to bring back to the district a method with INSAR. So you may have noticed that this recent annual groundwater report received for the first time our INSAR. And by connecting with those experts there at SkyGeo, who actually, their people actually wrote some of the books on the processing methods of INSAR, we were able to bring that expertise and benefit our mission here at the district. Something else I'd like to say is by being able to network with them, I applied to be the USA affiliate and I was granted that great honor. So I get to participate in annual meetings. I do those virtually. Sometimes they're very early, like 2 a.m., because you're working with people around the world. But it's a great opportunity to see what's coming down the pipe. And then myself, along with the USA member Manu Shirazi from from Virginia Tech, we actually volunteered to have the USA be the next hosting country of this symposium. So it's been a great opportunity to be a part of that group, and then be able to bring some of that education here. And another great example is Taiwan in particular. In the Netherlands, they showed their new monitoring method of using a magnetic extensometer. So they were able to target different intervals within the aquifer to measure compaction. So ours, you only get it at the base to see what's happening with the aquifer. They, in Taiwan, developed a new technique to see it at multiple different intervals within that aquifer. And then USGS over in California, they actually installed that same monitoring type. So we're able to not only collaborate with experts on what research and monitoring methods they're doing, and there's also policy and governance aspects, but there's innovative and frontier technology that we could be able to apply and afford there. So I will say we did submit 2 papers in fall of last year. Both of them are included in your memo on the abstracts. They were both accepted. And then I, as the USA affiliate for LASI, LASI is the Land Subsidence International Initiative. They invited me to give a presentation on subsidence risk and impacts. And then as part of that invitation, I will get complimentary registration as part of that group. This is also participation's already included in the budget, and if you have, the last thing I'll say before I get too technical on it, it's scheduled for the week of April 13th. It includes 2 workshops, which provide a great training opportunity for us at the district and other staff to learn other modeling and monitoring methods. It has 7 different sessions. So most places in the conferences, they barely have 1 session on subsidence. This one's having 7 different sessions, and then 7 excursions from their types of monitoring equipment, and then also includes element on their public outreach campaigns. Answer any questions if you have it.
So. Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion needed on this, or any other questions?
So this is in the general fund?
Yes.
So I will maintain my consistency, once again, vote against this, not because I don't think it's a worthy cause, but in light of the informative explanation, this is clearly the science and research, and should be made out of the science and research, in my opinion.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, just to kind of explain, my position on that. I've never voted for this, and I've always understood that the information that comes from this, we can get, outside of being in that. We can participate with the organization, but not necessarily have to be at the meetings. And it looks kind of bad to some of the other water organizations. We kind of get beat up for, for spending money on an international tour. And I think there's some very good explanations here, but apparently they're not getting out to the world. So I'm going to maintain my position that I think we do a good job of representing our district with people that participate with this, but I can't vote for spending funds for travel on this.
May I ask a question? Just for my own knowledge, I guess. Are we the only subsidence district from the US attending this event? Or?
So yes, so we're the only subsidence district in the country. Yes, for the United States. Yes, that.
This is an international event with several countries attending, right?
Oh yes, ma'am. Yes, so
I'm
you.
not sure like why we shouldn't. I'm not sure why.
Agreed.
I mean, this guy alone, he is the only subsidence district in the country representing the US in these events.
Well, they have USGS, there's other people other than subsidence districts that go for that.
Go on.
So because of some things recently, but the administration and the USGS, who is the member with LASI, will not be attending So there will be no USGS personnel.
So for this time, there will be no USGS?
Correct.
There will be researchers from universities in the United States, I would imagine, but USGS, at least based on the information we received, will not be engaged.
Yeah, so our previous person was Michelle Sneed, and she is retired, and the new person that is there, from my understanding, in talks will not be.
Just a curiosity question.
Sure.
USGS is not gonna be there because it was part of the federal cost-cutting programs that eliminated that, or?
I do not know, I'm not with USGS, I only have talked to that person, and he said he's not able to attend, so I don't want to name.
All right, any other questions? Then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of authorizing, the district staff to attend the, conference, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
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 So we had 3 nays, I believe.
Long, Sears, and Johnson.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10, general manager's report.
Just a few things to discuss today, and I just wanted to mention, welcome to 2026, Happy New Year, everybody, we all have a great holiday. We are in the process right now, and the big thing going on this right now is the annual report time, so we have communicated with all of our permittees, and we're beginning to get annual groundwater usage reports, and this is a process that extends through the initial deadlines through the end of the month. We typically have some stragglers that come in February, but this is the information that goes into our annual groundwater report that you see published in April or springtime, that shows our water use, groundwater use, and alternative water supply use that's published every year. So this is a big effort. We've worked over the last few years to transition to an electronic submission of this information, but as you might expect, there's still a lot of our permittees that prefer the paper side of things, so we get a lot of paper in. Recently, just to give you an example, we've been dealing with some issues even with the U.S. Post Office. We got comments yesterday from permittees that received their annual report, and it was all torn up. For some reason, received them all ripped and torn up, and that's something that we work with every year, it seems like. So we do have to deal with some of those kind of things. I just pointed out, let everybody know, and everybody who's paying attention to our meeting, that annual report time is here. Appreciate the prompt reply on that. All permittees are required, as part of their permit, to submit an annual report. So it is a permit requirement. As we move into the beginning of this year, we are, when we get back into planning, we'll start off with a new regional water plan later on during this report. The regional flood planning groups are continuing, and their next meeting, at least for San Jacinto, I think is in February. The interim of legislative session, I think is beginning, so we expect to see interim charges to the various committees here at the end of the month or beginning of February. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So what is the percentage of compliance on the report?
It's actually pretty good. I mean, we get, in any given year, there might be 5% or so that we don't get in. It just depends on and most of those are small. All the big ones are really compliant with it. Sometimes we have an issue with folks that are just new to the process, so and in our compliance side of it, they have to miss 2 years in a row. So if they miss 1 year, we talk to them, get a hold of them, and then, if they miss the next year, then they run into a compliance problem. But typically we get them in at some point. The big thing for us is trying to get all of them in before we publish the annual report. You'll see in the annual report each year, there's an adjustment to previous years, and that's for annual reports that we got in.
And so you feel pretty good about the reliability and accuracy of the information that we're getting?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, there are some permittees out there that estimate their pumpage, but they're typically small ones. For us, for what we're looking at, the big users and the users that are using it for irrigation and for like lake makeup and that kind of thing, they're all required to have meters. And there's always that check to be able to go back and read that meter, and our field staff do that. And because we have an historical record, we can see that if there's an anomalous reading, then either, typically what it is that they had a new person reading it and they read it wrong. Sometimes the meter failed. And then, it's very rare that we have somebody trying to get slip one by us, but we have tools in place to be able to.
Well,
Oh, I did include an article that on the Texas Tribune related to Corpus Christi. I know we talked about it a couple times. Drew mentioned it briefly today, but they're diversifying their source water, including groundwater, but they're also making Evangel out for down Corpus Christi, and it's created some local issues down there. It's similar, although not the same as the one that we've also talked about in North Texas. And then I guess to that point, I will say one thing, and we lost one of the water, very long and prominent legal mind in our region here recently, John Stover, who's the lawyer for, or sort of general counsel for some of the groundwater districts that surround our region. He passed away here recently. John was a really good law mind, really good on water law, and was really, I know he was a good friend of Greg and a collaborator and colleague of Greg's. So if you get a chance, think some good thoughts about John. He was a good guy. Sorry to see him.
Years ago, he was on the Texas Water Commission, right? Wasn't he a commissioner?
He was.
All right. Any questions for the general manager? Okay. That takes us to, item 11. That would be consultation with the general counsel on recent litigation on groundwater issues and legislators.
So what's a bad sign when I'm reading computer with me? I've been brought to the bureau because I wanted to give you some update on the enforcement matters in the district. Before I do that, real quickly, wanted to say the legal matters, the 3 cases we have in the Texas Supreme Court, and some of the other public decisions have really not moved at all during the month of December, which is not surprising. So not much has happened since our last meeting. The Gonzalez case, running sued by DVRA, is proceeding in typical sales pace. We're now looking at the possible August hearing date for that. And we have a whole lot that has to happen between, so I suggest this, I would anticipate it's going to be delayed again beyond that. I suspect that the trial itself will take us well over a year to get through, and then the appellate process after that may take even longer. We're trying to explain that to City of Corpus Christi folks. They're trying to purchase a permit in San Patricio County where they can put in roughly 22 wells and deliver that water to the Mary Rose pipeline, and that will supplement their supply. It looks like they're not, they sent us the district a letter saying that if they don't get this permit, then they're going to have to cut businesses and people off from water beginning in October next year, or October this year. So, they're in kind of dire straits there, and I can't guarantee they can get a permit. I mean, assuming the district wants to grant them a permit, any affected person can come in and file a protest against it. And that protest could take us 2.5, 3 years to get through the contested case hearing, and multiple years after that to go through the trials. So I urge them to go settle with everybody who might possibly have an objection before we get to that point. We'll see how successful they are with that. On the enforcement matters, just a real quick summary. We have had a lot of progress this last year in moving to cases, and mainly because we've brought in outside counsel to work with us on trying to get these things resolved. In total numbers, since I've been working for the district, I've had 1,708 different matters referred to me for resolution. We have resolved 1,471 of those, which is a resolution rate of about 86%. We currently have 237 active files. Some, I guess about 30 of those are gonna be sent off to outside counsel later this week. And, we'll be moving through. The most recent one was a family that, unfortunately, I think it was mainly a communication problem. I believe the family members only speak Vietnamese. And we sent our letters out in English, we sent them out in Spanish. We don't have Vietnamese on our schedule. We did have someone here that staff that speaks Vietnamese, and so we tried to connect that way, and that, we really couldn't ever get a good response. They kept talking to other people, talking to well-known or to other folks to work with us. We thought that they had counsel representing them about a year ago. That didn't work out. Turns out it wasn't a lawyer, turned out it was just a guy who tries to help communities and solve problems. We did file a lawsuit against the DeLong family. And, last month, we got a default judgment against them because they never answered the lawsuit. This month, late December actually, they finally hired an attorney. The attorney filed a motion for a new trial. I called the attorney and went, thank goodness you're here. we can talk to you about this. And after a couple of short discussions with him, later this month, the Long family is going to be connecting up to City of Houston water and plugging their well, which is the best possible solution overall. Takes the whole situation off the table forever. So that, very happy that that got resolved. We don't have another outstanding judgment we have to go trying to like. And so I'm real happy with that result. That was one of the Sledge Law Firm's matters that they did get to final resolution in terms of legislatively, the interim process is just not getting going. The Lieutenant Governor and Speaker have both given their chairman deadlines by which they can submit their requests for their own studies. They issue a list of what they're ordering those committees to study during the interim, probably mid-February. And then they'll start that process. Not much is gonna happen before the March primaries anyway. And I'll guarantee you that groundwater is going to be a topic of the session. We're gonna be talking about everything from the possibility of repealing the rule of capture to consolidation of districts into regional districts, perhaps even giving some, either making the GMAs a district and giving them some sort of oversight authority, or maybe making them be the ones to adopt the rules that everybody has to apply, and have individual districts and enforce those rules, which sounds really terrible. And so, you know, we've had some members suggest we just need to move everything up to TCQ or TWD and have them issue groundwater permits instead. I don't think anything that's gonna happen. I have advised my clients that if they have a reason to issue bonds, now's the time. Because the state doesn't like to dissolve districts, they have to owe people money. But we'll see what happens. It's gonna be a very, very busy groundwater session coming up. And again, I think that this district and the Fort Bend district are gonna be held up as shining lights of examples of how it should work. How we have worked cooperatively, how we have found ways to work through the problems, how we have worked, you know. And in essence, the system we have now doesn't require anybody to do anything other than choose what they want to do. They can choose to join the GRP, they can choose to go find an alternative water supply, or they can choose to participate in our education program and get a lot of alternate, 30% of their needs through that education program, or they can choose to pay disincentive fees, and it's entirely their choice which one they want to do. And fortunately, the disincentive fees are high enough that virtually everybody has chosen to find a way to convert or join in with a group that has overall convert. So I think we're a very good example for the rest of the state. I think we have acquired more of our constituency than any other district in the state, and yet have the least amount of controversy. And so I'm proud to have been serving as your general counsel for as long as I have, and I'm very proud to have represented this district. We did need to go into an executive session, Mr. Chairman, to discuss the settlement offer from Woodlock. So unless there are any questions.
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
how does the legislature just show up one day and say the rule of capture is out? How does that survive, or what are the constitutional arguments of, well, wait a minute? It's always been that way. I bought my property, I did this, that, one thing and another. How can somebody just come in and just, because that, the rule of capture is not established by legislation.
That's right, it's common law.
Right, so, but what's the constitutional argument on the other side? That's gonna be a free-for-all.
Well, and that really is an excellent question, because it highlights the difference between constitutional provisions, common law, and statutory law. And common law is, decisions that have been made, in fact, this particular one, the rule of capture, started out in 1904 in Texas, but it applied in 1800s case from England. So.
Yeah, it was sort of recognized in 1904 as having been something that
Right.
arguably existed from the beginning of time.
We've always followed the English common law, you know, that is in our constitution, we follow English common law. And so that just continued on. Now, common law provisions can change by statute anytime they want to. And however, there are always going to be potential takings questions about whether you're taking private property through that statutory provision or, whatever else might come up. In this particular instance, in the Day case in 2012, the Supreme Court of Texas said the rule of capture is not a property law. The rule of capture is a non-liability law. It says absolutely nothing about the ownership of groundwater. And then they went through every other case that they had decided since 1904 and said, we've never ever said that the groundwater in situ is the property of the surface estate owner.
Or the property of anybody.
Or the property of anybody. And then at the end of that discussion, they said, "Bogey, do so today." And so we hereby declare it's a vested property right, and this is something that's always existed. Now, that probably can only be changed by a constitutional amendment. The ownership interest and whether that's a vested property right is not something that the legislature can change. I remember hearing testimony at a House Natural Resources Committee here many years ago, where the attorney said, that's something you can't fix. And the legislature did not react very kindly to that suggestion. They can fix everything. So they can, but it probably requires a constitutional amendment to try and fix that.
Probably because why oil and not water?
Why
oil and not water?
Well, yeah, and interestingly, the U.S. Supreme Court, a long time ago, ruled that oil and gas in situ is not a protected property right. It's not a vested property right, but it's the same as it is with wild animals. As long as the animal's on your property, you have a right to capture that animal or whatever you need to do. But once it's on your property, it's no longer your property. And the same thing with oil and gas. As long as it's, coming out of your well, that's fine. And it's up to individual states and how they deal with interference between wells. But if somebody else takes it before you get it, too bad. And that does not, therefore, cannot be a vested property right. And therefore, the state does get to regulate how much oil and gas you get to take. Because it doesn't represent a vested property right. Now, how Texas has come up to say, your neighbor can steal your groundwater with impunity, but the state overregulates it, that creates a takings possibility. That, I don't understand how those two things can coexist. And eventually there'll be a case that comes up and deals with all that. And by the way, I'll be speaking on that exact topic at the statewide water law conference, which is called Changing the Face of Water Law, which is going to be in San Antonio at the end of February. So if you want to hear even more about it, you're welcome to come to San Antonio.
But you just send me your paper.
Okay.
You can zoom it.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't know if I can ask this basically in open session, but does the rule that an entity is too big to fail carry any water or apply?
No. And that shouldn't. I mean, apparently it does with Congress. I don't think it does with the courts at all. The law is fairly good about applying the law to everybody equally and not apply this law over here and that law over there based on who they are. Now, we can have rules that are specific to certain size population counties and stuff. We can have laws, for example, our law, we have that 10 million gallon limitation. Because, and that's strictly out of administrative efficiency. Trying to convert every single well across the entire Harris-Galveston area is going to be next to impossible, and quite possibly would put people out of business, as they're required to either go find alternative water supply or stop pumping or pay this incentive. And, so that's why we set that 10 million gallon limit, because below that, it's not worth us fighting about. So those kind of things we can do, but no, the too big to fail thing, I don't think there's any such thing as too big to fail.
So if a big regional water authority runs out of money, runs out of credit, runs out of everything, and they come to us and say, "Oh, we can't afford to go forward with anything, we're just stuck."
I hope that doesn't end up being the case, and I'm sure that will probably result in somebody suing somebody, some sort of litigation there, but more than likely that probably will be kicked to the legislature and saying, we have a problem here that we need to fix. By the way, we also knows with former Senator John Lindsay, who was the inventor, creator, of the senator who championed the creation of Green Water for this past away this last week. He was 91, I think. Long-time county judge, long-time senator, and I think the entire region knows him a debt of gratitude for having created the Green Water for us to find an overall solution to that problem out there. That's it, Mr. Chairman, let's ready to go into executive session.